Welcome to our wrap up of one of the most exciting bikes we've ever had here at the magazine. Now, before we get into the review, be sure to like, subscribe if you like our content, and follow our channel for plenty more. Now, Blake, as we said before, this is definitely one of the most mind-bending bikes we've ever got. We had to wait quite a while. Forestal were teasing us with the launch of these bikes for a long time. We finally got our hands on one. Mate, let's start up, run us through the main hits and bits and pieces about this bike, give us the facts and figures.
Absolutely. So yeah, we did have to wait years and years for this thing to actually conceptualize. I think Forestal did a really good job of sort of leading us along. I don't think that's anything a bike brand has done before as such, but basically what they've come out swinging. They've come out absolutely swinging. Forestal, with this particular bike here, the Siryon, this is their bigger, burlier enduro bike. So we've got 170mm fork, 170mm rear travel on this model thanks to RockShox. We've got relatively conservative geometry as far as the length of the bike goes compared to some bikes pushing the modern geometry thing, but it's very comfortable. It's capable of a lot of different things. It's not just flat out high speed, big brawler of a bike. It is really like, it ticks a lot of boxes, you know what I mean? Like you can have fun on a set of jumps, roost the corners, but you can still go absolute balls to the wall downhill on it. Obviously this thing is spec'd to the nines. This is the Siryon Neon, the Aurora. So we're running RockShox Ultimate Suspension, Exo drivetrain, Magura MT7 brakes. We've got carbon cranks, carbon wheels on this thing. It is absolutely Gucci. It really is the Ferrari of e-bikes.
Mate, you've hit the nail on the head there. This thing is absolute top of the line. Now, perhaps the most surprising or hard to believe part of this bike is actually its weight. This is an e-enduro. It's not just like an SL e-bike. Mate, hit us with just how light this thing is, because it's actually hard to believe until you pick it up.
Absolutely. So this thing is within the lightest few of e-MTBs. Obviously we are talking the lightweight motor, the lightweight battery. We're not working with 900 watt hours worth of battery output. But this thing is a pretty safe to say this thing feels like it's weighing about 17.3 out on the trails. We're setting that up tubeless. I think we could probably shave a little bit of weight off this puppy as well with some lighter weight tyres. The Panaraces have been performing very well, but I do feel like they're lacking a little bit in the rolling resistance sort of thing. I'm not sure how much they weigh exactly, but I feel like we could save a bit of weight there as well. So to be able to take more weight off it is just absolutely mind-boggling.
Mate, 17 kilos out of the box for an e-bike.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Now, how have Forestal achieved that weight? We look at the frame, obviously full carbon. This thing, as we said before, is like a Ferrari. It's a hypercar performance e-bike. How have they managed to get the weight that low? Because it's almost like it doesn't come with wheels or something. Like something's got to be missing.
Exactly, yeah.
How have they managed to pull it off?
I think it just comes down to, like, Forestal have obviously just spent years and years developing their carbon fiber. They must have some crazy engineers in there working with potions and lotions and all that sort of stuff, or, you know, I don't know, maybe they didn't put glue in the carbon or something like that. But all jokes aside, like, I think it really does just come down to the quality and the finish of the carbon fiber. Not to say that, you know, it's not lacking in stiffness or anything like that either. Obviously we've got the one-piece swing arm there, which, you know, you go back a few years in the early days of MTB, there was a few brands that tried to do that other than, you know, Orange, and it just failed miserably. There was just way too much flex, all that sort of stuff. But this full carbon fiber single swing arm coming off the linkage there, like I've not noticed there to be any more flex than anything else out there on the market. It has just got to be the absolute toppest tier of carbon fiber that has allowed them to make it this lightweight.
And this Barfang motor, now, first time we've ever had this motor on any bike we've tested here at the Mont. What's the motor like? What's the ride experience? How's it handle? What's it like to live with? You've been on the bike for a few months now. Tell us a bit about the performance of the motor.
Absolutely. So one key thing I'll touch on before we get into the performance of this bike in particular is I've spoken to a lot of people out there who've maybe borrowed a mate's or hired one of the lighter weight e-bikes, and they say like, oh, I'm just draining through batteries like you wouldn't believe. And it's something you really do have to be conscious of your gear choice, a lot more like a normal mountain bike compared to a full power e-bike. Full power e-bike, it's like a big diesel. You can just, it doesn't matter what gear you put it in, you just pump that thing.
Just grind away all day.
You just grind away, you'll go up anything, and you know, you're not really affecting your battery performance and all that sort of stuff. So, but on the lightweight e-bikes, you have to be conscious a lot more of your gearing choice when climbing and that type of thing. not only to get the most out of the motor, but also to be conservative a little bit with your battery power. So we'll put that out there to start with. But the actual performance of the Bafang motor, like as I said, when we sort of found out that it was spec'd with a Bafang motor, we were sort of scratching our heads going, what's going on here? Like, but you know, it didn't take long to do a little bit of research, and we realised that okay, these guys are actually the biggest manufacturer and supplier of e-bike motors to things like your commuter bikes and your city bikes and all that sort of stuff. So they do obviously know what they're doing. But this particular motor has been designed with Forestal. It's not like they've just gone off the shelf and picked, oh yeah, we'll grab that one, that looks great. It's been designed hand in hand together to really get the best performance for exactly what Forestal wanted these bikes to be, you know, designed for, which is high-end e-biking. So the motor actual the power delivery from the motor is quite snappy. It's quite, you know, it's not very linear. It's boom, it's right there all the time. As soon as you put that power through those pedals. So in that aspect, it does feel more like a high-powered motor than some of the other SL motors out there.
How much torque does this thing have? Because I remember just doing a quick car park lap when we first arrived at the mag a couple of months ago, and I thought, wow, this has got a lot more pepper than the Trek Fuel EXE, even maybe like the Levo SL.
The Levo, yeah, absolutely.
So how much power does this thing have? Because it feels like it's a lot.
So between myself and Scotty, we've already been on a couple of these mid-power, super light e-bikes. And this thing is actually top of the pops as far as the output of this motor goes. So it's putting out 60 Newton meters. So it's almost verging on where a few of the full fat e-bike motors were coming out years and years ago. But now they're a lot more efficient and they're utilizing what their output is a lot better.
Tell us a bit about the battery. So we've talked before about the 17 kilos, which is mind-bending. Does it have like a 100 watt hour battery, or has it just got a couple of Duracell batteries slapped in? Like, what size battery is this thing got? Because you've ridden this bike, we did the 41,000, 40 kilometers,
yep.
1,000 vertical, a lot of pedaling. Now you rode this bike and you still had some juice when you got home. So how much battery does this thing have in it?
Yeah, so that was a big ride. That was actually my first ride on this bike, and I'm not gonna lie, I did have a little bit of range anxiety, being like the first hit out on it, and having one of the, you know, higher end motor power outputs. So this thing's actually spec'd with a 360 watt hour battery, which, you know, again, it doesn't sound like a lot, but because you're saving so much weight on the bike itself, it's a lot more efficient, you know what I mean? There's a lot less drag there because of the whole weight of the package. So yeah, I rode that whole 41,000 ride. I rode there, I rode home, and I still had about 9% battery left. So I did time it absolutely perfectly. But yeah, so we've got 360 watt hour battery paired with that 60 Newton meter motor. It's a deadly combo.
Wow, it sounds like, and I've seen you climb this thing up some extremely steep trails. Tell us a bit about some of those characteristics of how it climbs, how it pedals, and when you tap over that 25 kilometer level of assistance, does it kind of all of a sudden get really heavy and bogged down, or is it quite, like, what's the friction like that the motor's putting out?
So as far as the climbing goes, again, we've got a relatively conservative geometry. So we're not working with like a 61 degree head angle or anything like that. So this thing climbs like a mountain goat. It absolutely just rips up the climbs. Again, being so light, you don't even feel like you're on an e-bike at all, apart from the fact that you're getting, you know, the foot up the butt, you know, and you're getting that extra assistance. Yeah. So as far as like the efficiency of the bike overall goes, obviously, you know, it descends great. We can see that from the video footage, but the efficiency of climbing and just general trail riding of it is just absolutely second to none for its category or for an e-bike at all.
Now, one of the guys that played a big part in bringing this bike to life is one of the world's most well-respected and famous mountain bikers, Cedric Garcia, another Andorran local, which is where Forestal are actually from. Now, being, as we've said, one of the fastest riders in the planet, how much of that sort of that DNA has been pushed into this bike? Is it a speed machine when you're putting it down a trail?
Absolutely. You can go back and look at videos of Cedric racing 4-cross and the old dual slalom videos. Oh, yeah. He has a very, very unique style of riding. He was very active on the bike, and I really do think that he had a big influence in designing this bike and the influence he's had on the geometry, because it's such an active bike. Like you almost feel like you're Cedric when you're riding on it. It's playful, it's easy to pop around, rip through corners, get the front wheel up. Like, it's almost as if, like you said, like his influence has brought some of his own riding style into the DNA of the bike.
Nice. And so how does it descend and how's it jump, things like that? Because again, that's some of the big characteristics he was always famous for. And I've seen you hitting some big lines on this bike.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, again, it's not the most aggressive geometry, but this thing will absolutely plow anything you pointed at. I was actually pretty taken aback on that first ride, or the first couple of rides, in what the bike was really capable of. I myself generally do lend towards, you know, enjoying a bit of a heavier bike for a normal bike. So this thing is weighted absolutely perfectly for my liking. And being that a lot of the weight is lower down in the motor and the battery, like we've touched on that with a lot of e-bikes before, but that just adds so much more stability to what is essentially, you know, not a super long bike. So you're taking, you know, a playful geometry bike, but making it more, you know, plow happy, I guess you could say, by making sure you've got a low center of gravity, and just, yeah, it just eats up the trails. It's amazing.
Knocked out. Now, it has to be said, it's one of the cleanest looking bikes, one of the prettiest bikes we've ever had here, e-bike or otherwise. Now, one of the ways Forestal have achieved that is with the internal cabling in through the headset there. Have you had any dramas with that throughout the last few months, or has it been pretty tucked away neat and set and forget?
Absolutely, like the silhouette of the frame of the bike itself is absolutely beautiful.
So nice, eh?
And when we pulled it out of the box, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit nervous about that cable routing in through the top of the head tube, and how is this going to affect the gear cable, the shifting, the dropper? Like, are they going to get a little bit gummy over time? But it just hasn't been the case. Like the way that they've routed the cabling in through the top of the head tube there, down through the down tube, in around the battery and that type of thing, they've done a very, very good job of securing it all so that there's no pinch points or anything like that.
Awesome. When
the bars are rotating. Yeah, and it's, you know, it makes for an absolutely beautiful bike, as you said.
Wicked. Now, all e-bikes, well, most e-bikes come with some form of display. These more minimalist e-bikes often have a very, very small control where there's not a lot of information at hand. This thing definitely does not hit that category.
They've gone the
This
opposite
thing
direction.
is pretty much, has a full-on laptop built into the top of it. It is the most incredible display of any e-bike we've ever had here. Full color, super sharp. Mate, tell us a bit about the display and some of the performance benefits that it offers, because it is mental. You need to see this thing in real life, right?
Essentially, you've got a smartphone in your top tube.
Wow.
You've got, if you want to delve into it, you can have more data than you can poke a stick at. You can opt for a bit more of a basic heads-up display, just giving you the essentials. But you can fiddle around with the settings, and yeah, you can really nerd out on this thing, which I've been enjoying. You can have live maps on there if you want.
Incredible.
Like you can integrate it with Strava, all these sorts of things. And it's not just on the bike. Once you connect this through Bluetooth, like, obviously every e-bike brand now is working with some type of connectivity app, but Forestal have just taken it to the next level. Like, again, it's not for everybody, like not everybody's gonna enjoy that, so you can sort of play it safe and keep it a bit more basic. But yeah, it definitely, it broadens the horizons of what e-bikes can be now, but it also makes you wonder where we're going to be in the next couple of years.
This Forestal really is pushing the envelope. For a brand that's really just sort of come onto the scene, obviously we've spent a bit of time talking about this. They literally had years and years of development for this thing. It's arrived and it is an absolute out of the ballpark performance. I guess it's like Ferrari don't just bring out average cars. Every single car they come out with is mind-boggling, and this thing certainly lived up to that ante that we were kind of promised from the brand. Now, tell us a bit about the travel. It's 170mm front and rear. That's a lot of travel for an e-bike.
Yeah.
How does it feel when you're out on the trail? Does it feel like maybe too much travel?
Not at all. Like, it does obviously come down to suspension setup and these types of things, but I feel like Forestal have done an incredibly good job of setting up this linkage design, especially considering it's around, again, this single piece rear triangle, single swing arm rear triangle. They've just done an amazing job of, I feel like a broken record, but just keeping that efficiency. Like, the bike is so damn efficient while pedaling, but as soon as you start to point it downhill and get into some rocky stuff, it's like riding on a magic carpet. But at the same time, like, it's still playful. Like, they've just ticked absolutely every box. Obviously, they've paired it up on this model with RockShox suspension, different specs, coming spec with different models of suspension and that type of thing. But they've just done an awesome job of sort of ticking a few different boxes where, generally when you're talking 170, it's a big burly bruiser, and it only wants to go downhill, but it's just not the case.
That's one thing I remember you saying when we were riding one day. It's actually really nimble. It could almost be a 130mm travel bike. It just happens to have a lot of travel there in the boot when you want to unleash on it.
100%.
So we'd mentioned before about the spec, and that's right, the Forestal is available in a few different spec options. Be sure to jump onto pushies.com.au now to browse the entire Forestal range. Mate, first and last impressions of this bike before we wrap it up.
It's just mind-blowing. You can't really put words on how this bike makes you feel while you're riding. It's just generally, it's such a broad horizon that this bike brings to the trail riding and enduro riding scene. Like, again, 170 mil travel, like you wouldn't take this out for a normal trail ride generally, but it just, being an e-bike, like you just blast everything at 25 Ks plus, and yeah, it makes maybe not so fun trails just an absolute blast, every single one of them.
Mate, there you have it. Forestal have absolutely knocked it out of the ballpark. Blake, thanks a bunch, mate. Spent a few months riding this bike and it has certainly impressed. Be sure to stay tuned to our channel for plenty more reviews coming up and plenty more Forestal coverage in the future.